afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Anmol. How are you?
I am fine, ma'am. How are you?
I'm also good. So, did you revise the lesson, whatever we did yesterday?
Yes.
Is everything clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we should continue then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let us first summarize what we have done till now, right? A truly beautiful mind. The mind that refers to the personality of a renowned scientist, Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, whose name is the synonym of the word genius. Genius means extraordinarily intelligent. So was Albert Einstein. In the lesson, we get to know the highlights of his life, but not merely Einstein as a scientist, but also Einstein as a humanitarian. The one who had not devoted his time only in exploring and discovering the mysteries or solving the mysteries, but the one who had also thought of future of the world. Then how he had contributed to establishing peace in the world. This is what you will get to know in this story. During this very course of the lesson till 8th paragraph, we have learned about how he started going to school, how he started speaking late. When he started speaking, he used to stammer. So that was a matter of worries for the parents. Mother in particular had no hope for Albert Einstein because she found her child not to be as ordinary and normal as the other children were. She didn't know that her son was going to be a great scientist in future. Anyway, he had studied in the high school, then he moved for the university education. There he fell in love with the girl, Mileva Marias, right? And she was also as intellectual as he was. Both of them, they were intellectuals. Both of them together had worked on exploration, discovery, and research. And then in 1905, at last, he had worked on the special theory of relativity. So we will get back to paragraph 9, however we had done yesterday, yet I will repeat. Fine, Anmol?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. One of the famous papers of 1905 was Einstein's special theory of relativity, according to which time and distance are not absolute. So this was in 1905 when one after another 4 papers he had published on his theory, on his research. And this one in particular special theory of relativity that had brought him a lot of fame, because this theory was based on the fact that it was written that the measurement of time and distance is not absolute. It depended on something else. Indeed, two perfectly accurate clocks will not continue to show the same time if they come together again after a journey, if one of them has been moving very fast relative to the other. This is how he had tried to further explain to the world that according to this theory, if there are 2 clocks and both are moving, they will not show the same time. One clock will move faster than the other. And then from this followed the world's most famous formula, the mathematical formula we got from this theory that describes the relationship between mass and energy. E is equal to mc square. So in this equation, as we discussed yesterday, right, E stands for energy, m for mass, and c for the speed of the light in a vacuum, right, about 3 lakh kilometer per second. Now, just try to understand what he had tried to convey, right? This theory of relativity gave us this basic formula of physics, right? Where, as we discussed, E stands for energy, mc stands for mass, and what you call it, the speed of the light in the vacuum. Vacuum meaning, now what is vacuum? Vacuum means where there is no air. Is that clear? Where there is no air, and the speed of light in vacuum is almost 3 lakh kilometer per second, right? Then to put it into simpler words, that is to put it in simpler words or to make it more clear to the readers, he has given this example. When you sit with a nice girl for 2 hours, it seems like 2 minutes. When you sit on a hot stove for 2 minutes, it seems like 2 hours, that is relatively. So a person would feel the timing differently. I hope it is clear to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now let us continue further. While Einstein was solving the most difficult problems in physics, his private life was unraveling. Private life meaning personal life. While he was solving the most difficult problems in physics, he had been dealing with the most complex problems in physics. His own private life, his own personal life, it started failing. It started failing because there had been some turmoil in his personal life. Now, what it is that he had fallen in love with that girl, of course, the point here is that he had become young, so he wanted to marry this young girl. So let us see whether he gets approval from the family or not, which had been actually the cause of the cause of disturbance in his life. Albert had wanted to marry Mileva right after finishing his studies, but his mother was against it. As I told you, he wanted to marry this young girl, but the mother would not approve of this. Soon after finishing his studies, he wanted to marry the girl, but mother did not approve. Now, what is the reason why she said no to it? She thought Mileva, who was 3 years older than her son, was too old for him. One reason was that Mileva was 3 years older. Einstein was 3 years younger to Mileva. So mother thought that an older girl would not be fit for the marriage with her son. This was the one reason. The second reason was she was also bothered by Mileva's intelligence. She's a book like you, his mother said. Another reason was mother thought she found that the girl is also as intellectual as is her son. So she thought that such an intellectual girl would not turn out to be a good wife. Because when she is intellectual, of course, she must be an ambitious girl. Of course, she must have some dreams of her life to fulfill. She would love to fulfill her dreams first. And if she devotes all her life to fulfilling her dreams, then she would not be perhaps able to fulfill her duties of a married life. So that's why she thought that the girl was not a right choice for marriage with Albert Einstein. But Einstein, he put the wedding off. He put the wedding off, meaning he postponed his wedding for some time. He waited for the right time to come and then he would marry. Put off is a phrase, right? The pair finally married in January 1903. They loved each other, and finally in 1903, both Einstein and Mileva, they got married and had two sons. They were the parents of two sons. But a few years later, the marriage faltered. They had two sons, they grew, but after some time, their marriage failed. Now here when we learn that the marriage failed, you remember that Einstein's mother, she thought that Mileva was too intelligent, so she cannot be a good wife. Right? Now here it seems that perhaps to some extent, Einstein's mother was right. Now what happened? That their marriage was failing? Mileva, meanwhile, was losing her intellectual ambition and becoming an unhappy housewife. She was an intellectual. She had ambitions in her life. She also, like Einstein, she also wanted to do something extraordinary. She also had dreams. She wanted to fulfill those dreams, but she just found it very difficult to deal with two different worlds. One was the family life, that is looking after the children, looking after the house, and the other was to fulfill his dreams, that is to pursue his career. She was literally juggling. She was juggling with her career ambitions. She was juggling with her duties towards her family. As a result, what it is, she could not maintain a balance. If she has given more the time to fulfill her ambitions, then she would not be able to fulfill her duties towards her family. And if she was fulfilling the duties towards her family, she would not be able to give shape to her dreams that she had woven, that she would become something. So this is what she found, an imbalance between the two. After years of constant fighting, the couple finally divorced in 1919. Now, as a result, what it would be, the couple, the husband and wife, they would often fight. Their mutual quarrels, they had become so constant, they had become so frequent and continuous, that finally they decided that it was difficult for both of them to get along. So they divorced in 1919. Einstein married his cousin Elsa the same year. The same year in 1919, he divorced, and the same year, Einstein remarried. He married his cousin Elsa, right? And the same year, when he married his cousin Elsa, what else had happened in his life? Einstein's new personal chapter coincided with his rise to world fame. His new personal chapter, what was the new chapter in his personal life? Could you get it?
Remarried.
Right, that he got remarried. Right, he married with Elsa. This was a new chapter. This is a new development in his life, right? But it coincided, meaning at the same time, what had happened? He had done something. He had risen to the world of fame. He had become famous all over the world. How? In 1915, you remember? In 1915, he published his 4 papers, one after another, right? And one paper that was based on general theory of relativity. In 1915, he had published, and in 1919, that theory had turned out to be correct, accurate. How it is, let us read. Yes, general theory of relativity, which provided a new interpretation of gravity. he had published his paper in 1915 that was based on his general theory of relativity that had given a new interpretation to gravity. Now, according to Einstein, what happened? Just a minute. Yes. Now, what happened? An eclipse of the sun in 1919 brought proof that it was accurate. You know what it is? In 1915, when this paper was published, according to this theory, Albert Einstein, he had told the world that in 1919, a solar eclipse would happen, and then apparent position of the stars, it would change. When he stated this, the people did not agree with him. Some people that did not agree with him, they doubted it. Right. But what happened? In 1919, yes, there was a solar eclipse. It did happen. So it was an evidence, this happening of solar eclipse Anmol, this was an evidence, this was the proof that his theory was accurate. That solar eclipse proved that Einstein's general theory of relativity was correct. Is that clear? Einstein had, yes.
Ma'am, what is the meaning of interpretation?
Interpretation is explanation, right? A new interpretation of gravity. He had given a new meaning, a new explanation, a new definition of gravity. Is that clear?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Einstein had correctly calculated in advance the extent to which the light from fixed stars would be deflected through the sun's gravitational field. Einstein had correctly calculated in advance. In advance when? That was in 1915, when his paper was published, right? So in 1915 only, he had calculated that in the year 1919, there would be a solar eclipse. And due to that solar eclipse, the position of the stars would change to some extent. Would be deflected, meaning would change to some extent. And his calculation was accurate. Why? Because it happened. So it was announced that his work was a scientific revolution. The newspapers proclaimed. To proclaim is to announce, right? The newspapers, they declared, they announced that his work was a scientific revolution. Why a scientific revolution? Because what he had predicted, or on the basis of his theory he had calculated, that turned out to be true 4 years later. I hope it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, Einstein received the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921. He was honored with the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921 because of his contribution to physics. Now here, in the context of Nobel Prize, I want to tell you, please do see this carefully, the spellings of the word Nobel. Many people pronounce it as Nobel Prize, right? But this is not N-O-B-L-E, this is N-O-B-E-L. So it is pronounced as Nobel Prize. Now, what is this Nobel Prize? Here you will get to know. I have something for you. You will read this. Yes, can you see this on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Nobel Prize, this is a very prestigious prize of the world, which has been christened in the name of Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel was a Swedish chemist, engineer, and industrialist, most famously known for the invention of dynamite. He had invented dynamite. In 1896, he died, and in his will is a document when a person before his death, he writes a document and declares that after his death, whom his property is to be distributed, right? So in his will, he bequeathed meaning he gave all of his remaining realizable assets, all his wealth, all his assets that he had, he announced that they to be used to establish 5 prizes. That the wealth he had left, that should be used to give away 5 prizes, which became known as Nobel Prizes after the name of Alfred Nobel, right? And Nobel Prizes were first awarded in 1901. The Nobel Prizes are awarded to those who during the preceding year have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. Those in the field of sciences, literature, and peace, if they have contributed something extraordinary for the welfare of the humans, then such people, they are given Nobel Prizes. Nobel Prizes are awarded in the fields of physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, and peace. This is just to add to your knowledge. I hope it is clear to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes. We are back to the screen. We are back to the lesson. Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, he was showered with honors and invitations from all over the world. All over the world, he had been invited by various departments, various organizations. He was given a huge applause, great praise, and he was honored, and he was respected by people all over the world, and lauded by the press, praised by the press. Stories were published in the newspapers, in the magazines, praising him and his contribution to the field of science. Clear? Now, when the Nazis came to power in Germany in 1933, Einstein emigrated to the United States. In 1933, Germany was overpowered by Nazis. Nazis were the rulers. Nazis was the party. And the ruler of that party was, if you have heard the name, Adolf Hitler. Right? Hitler was a dictator, right? In 1933, Germany was overpowered by Nazis under the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler. So all those American physicists, they started migrating from Germany to United States. Einstein also migrated to United States. He also left Germany and went to United States. 5 years later, the discovery of nuclear fission in Berlin had American physicists in an uproar. 5 years later, 5 years later, it was discovered what nuclear fission, that is the process of making nuclear bombs or the process of making atom bombs. This process was discovered in Berlin. It was discussed there in Berlin in Germany. And American physicists, they were very upset. Why the American physicists were upset? Why the American scientists were upset? Many of them had fled from fascism, just as Einstein, and now they were afraid the Nazis could build and use an atomic bomb. Many of them had fled from fascism. Now let us first of all know what is fascism. Fascism was a dictatorial concept. Like Nazis, They were dictators. Fascism is also a dictatorial form of government that was started in Europe from Italy by the rule of Benito Mussolini. You might have heard the names of two great dictators in the world, in the history. One is Hitler, the other is Mussolini of Italy, right? So many people, they had run away from fascism, they had left Italy also because they just wanted to get away from Mussolini, who was also a dictator, just as Einstein had. Einstein also left these places. And now all these phases, all these scientists, they were upset, they were afraid. Why? They were afraid that Nazis could make those nuclear bombs and they could use those atomic bombs or nuclear bombs. They could misuse those nuclear bombs. And if those bombs are used, what will happen? They were afraid that the masses would be destroyed. There would be massive destruction that take place if those bombs are used. This was the reason for the American scientists to get upset. I hope it is clear.
Ma'am, one thing I want to know.
Yes.
Ma'am, who made the nuclear fission means Einstein or Nazis?
No, they were Nazis. They were
Okay.
Nazis, right? Yes. At the urging of a colleague, Einstein wrote a letter to the American president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, on 2 August 1939, in which he warned a single bomb of this type exploded in a port might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory. Just like many other scientists, Einstein also became very upset as he must have discussed with some of his colleagues, right? One of his colleagues, he requested him, Einstein, you write a letter to the president. Why he himself did not write, but why he told Einstein, because he knew that Einstein was a famous scientist and he could easily convince and convey the American president. So at his behest, Einstein wrote a letter to the American president, the then president, Mr. Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt. On 2nd August 1939, he wrote the letter in which he cautioned him. President, sir, a single bomb of this type exploded in a port. Just one drop of this nuclear bomb or atom bomb, if exploded in a port, in a town or city near the sea, it would destroy not only the whole port, it would destroy not only the whole city or the town, but with some of the surrounding territory, meaning many other areas which are around that town or city. His words did not fail to have an effect. His words did not fail to have an effect, meaning his words had an impact on President Roosevelt. He thought about it. But the Americans, they developed the atomic bomb in a secret project of their own. But what the Americans did, they developed their own project, they developed their own atomic bomb secretly. The world was unaware. The Nazis, the Germans, they had created the process of making nuclear bombs. The world knew. What Americans had been creating, what Americans had been in the process of doing, nobody was aware. But the world had come to know when that atomic bomb dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. These two beautiful cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were beautiful cities. The bomb was dropped on these two beautiful cities by Americans. Why? just to experiment whether it works or not, whether it would prove disastrous or not. And beautiful two cities of Japan, they had turned into dust within the blink of time. Within no time, they had turned to dust. They were completely destroyed. However, today's Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they are also many times more beautiful than they were before. But you see what a destruction they had caused. Here I have some clips for you to see. The destruction caused by, can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? You see that how they have turned to dust. These are the ruins of the city. At one time, beautiful buildings, beautiful two towns were existing, were standing there. But within no time, they were turned to dust. Look at this. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Look here. Look here. These. This was the destruction that they had caused. Right? Okay. We are back to the chapter. I hope you can see.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Einstein was deeply shaken by the extent of the destruction. He was badly disturbed. He was very upset when he saw this destruction. This time, he wrote a public missive to the United Nations. Public missive is a letter. This time, he had written a public letter on behalf of all the people of the world to the United Nations. In it, he proposed the formation of a world government. He proposed, he requested, he gave them the idea that a world government be formed that would take care of all the countries of the world, that would look after, that would cater to the needs of all those countries of the world that would become the member of this United Nations. Unlike the letter to Roosevelt, this one made no impact. When he had written a letter to Roosevelt, it had an impact that Americans, they thought they would also make a bomb. And they did. But when he wrote this letter to the United Nations to form a world government, nothing was done by the United Nations. But over the next decade, 10 years later, Einstein got even more involved in politics, agitating for an end to the arms buildup and using his popularity to campaign for peace and democracy. But then Einstein, he started participating in political activities actively, agitating for an end to the arms buildup. Try to understand, agitating, fighting. He started fighting, he had become revolutionized in order to end the use of arms. Agitating for an end to the arms buildup, meaning he raised his voice to stop making arms and weapons. Right? But unfortunately, Anmol, what has happened? Till today, if you see, all the countries, they are in race of having their own arms and ammunition. Purchasing aircraft, purchasing weapons from one country or the other. When a country is purchasing arms and ammunition, when a country is purchasing weapons for their military from the other countries, it's not a healthy sign. Actually, it is not a healthy sign. It means we are preparing ourselves for a battle. It means we are preparing ourselves for a war. It means that the war is certain, war will happen. So this is what he had agitated, he had countered, he had confronted the world leaders that they should stop building the arms and weapons. And because he was a great scientist, he knew he was popular, so he used his popularity to campaign. He campaigned for peace and democracy, that there should be a democratic setup all over the world. Every country should be a democratic country. If the countries do not practice democracy, then there would be anarchy in the world. And peace would not be possible then. And today you see so many countries, they have democracy, including India, one of the largest democracies of the world. When Einstein died in 1955 at the age of 76, he was celebrated as a visionary. Now this was his humanitarian aspect, that how when nuclear bombs process was prepared, how he had showed his concern to the President Roosevelt by writing a letter. When an atomic bomb was dropped by America on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and they were destroyed, he had written a letter to the United Nations to form a world government. How he had come out on the streets to campaign for peace and democracy. This shows that how humanitarian he was. When he died at the age of 76, he was celebrated as a visionary. He was described as a visionary. Visionary is the person who thinks about the future. The one who does not only think about the future, but he also gives you a course of action. That what is to be done to give a shape to the future. And he was described as world citizen as much as a scientific genius. So remember, he was not known not only because he was a scientist, because he was a genius, but he was a visionary. He was a global citizen. Today we call it global citizen, right? And in fact, today, you know that what happens in our schools also, we teach our children. What we teach our children? That we are not the citizens of one country only. We are the global citizens. How we are the global citizens? Because Anmol, you will find the problems we are facing in our country, they are not confined to us only. You go to America, you go to England, you go to Pakistan, you go to China, you go to Indonesia, you go to Canada or Germany or France. When you meet the children of your age there, they will also share the same concerns with you. Here I will tell you a very interesting thing I would share with you. In my school, we have a global club, right? In this global club, we have a few members of the global club, and these children of the global club, they interact with the other children of their age from different countries of the world. And whenever I had conducted, we would conduct video conferences for them. So till now, more than 39 countries, these children of my school, they had interacted with. They had interacted with the children of Israel, Egypt, Syria, UAE, Canada, Australia, UK, Indonesia, Pakistan many times, Philippines, etc., number of countries. And after every video conferences, whenever we would take up an issue to discuss, they would say, ma'am, there is no difference. They are also like us. They also have the same problems. Are you understanding what I said?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So this is how we are world citizens today. We are global citizens today. This is the concept that was used when he died, and today we all are the global citizens. With this, the lesson has ended. The lesson has completed. So it's a complete highlight of the great personality, that is Albert Einstein.
Einstein.
Yes. Any problem?
No, ma'am.
If there is any, you can always ask me. Okay, we have the time. Let us discuss the questions. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So here is the first exercise. Here are some headings for paragraphs in the text. Write the number of the paragraphs for each title against the heading. Meaning, in which paragraph, each paragraph has been given a number. So you have to tell the number of the paragraph where these things have been discussed. For example, Einstein's equation that he had given to physics, right? That is given in 9th paragraph.
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Yes. Einstein meets his future wife. Where is it given? In which paragraph? Yes.
Ma'am, 11th paragraph.
11th paragraph. No, I'm afraid. And more in 9th paragraph, he has given equation and he meets his future wife before that.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Ma'am, 10th paragraph.
No, child. Before that, 7th paragraph.
7th paragraph.
When he
Ma'am
meets
means
Mileva.
Ma'am means no married. Remarried.
Before marriage. Before marriage. Right?
Okay.
Yes. The third one is the making of a violinist. He started learning playing violin.
Ma'am, 3rd paragraph.
Exactly.
Very
Right. Yes, absolutely right. Good. Now, Mileva and Einstein's mother. When mother.
Ma'am, in 10th paragraph.
In 10th paragraph. Very good. A letter that launched the arms race. A letter after which the arms race began in America.
16th paragraph.
16th. It is 15th, beta.
15th, okay.
Right? Okay. A desk drawer full of ideas, the which he described as a bureau. A bureau of physics, a bureau of theoretical physics, he called. He called his table drawer as a bureau of.
8th paragraph.
Right, very correct. All right, now marriage and divorce.
In 10th and 11th between.
11th, in 11th paragraph.
Okay.
Right, okay. Let's come to the next question. Yes, who had these opinions about Einstein? He was boring. He was stupid and would never succeed in life. He was a freak. Who said he was boring? Who thought he was boring?
Ma'am, classmates.
Right, his playmates. Okay. They would call him what?
Brother boring.
Right, brother boring. So you must remember this, okay? There can be a question on this. Okay. He was stupid and would never succeed in life. Who said this?
Parents.
The parents, yes, they thought so. He was a freak.
Ma'am, freak means weak, na?
No, freak is unusual kind. Strange.
What is the strange?
Yes.
Ma'am, I don't know.
Mother thought he was a freak, right?
Okay.
And he was one thing, the second one, he was stupid and would never succeed in life. If you remember that one headmaster had told the parents, whichever profession he goes, he would never succeed in life, right? So this, of course, it was parents' opinion, but when it is added to this, he would never succeed in life, then it means the headmaster. All right? Okay. Now here are given a few statements. We have to find out the reasons, right? Einstein leaving the school in Munich for good. What do you think was the reason that he was leaving the school in Munich?
Ma'am, because they in the first school they're so strict teachers.
Right. Yes.
And they're so disciplined so much.
Right. Right. So how did he find? How did he feel? Einstein left the school in Munich for good because in Munich, the school had a lot of discipline, very strict discipline, right? And there was no freedom. So he felt suffocated there. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now the next. Einstein wanting to study in Switzerland rather than in Munich.
Because Munich in Munich school there was so disciplined and Einstein feels suffocated, but in the Switzerland there was school, there's no some discipline, not like lot of discipline, and some freedom for children.
Right, right. Okay, that's right. Now let me add here. Okay, Einstein wanted to study in Switzerland rather than in Munich because in Switzerland, because Switzerland was more liberal than Munich. Right? Do remember this word, liberal. Switzerland was more liberal. There, the students, they had the freedom to express themselves, to express their ideas or express their thoughts, right? Moreover, he wanted to go to a German-speaking school, right? Okay. Einstein seeing in Mileva an ally. Why did he find Mileva that she would be a good friend?
Because Einstein was a very genius person, and Mileva has the same quality like genius and intellectual. So Einstein seeing in Mileva like she was my friend.
Very good, very good. Complete answer you have given, correct. What do these tell you about Einstein? All these that we have discussed, that he left the school in Munich, then he wanted to go to Switzerland, then he found Mileva an ally. So what do these tell you about Einstein?
That means the points that are given in chapter.
In general.
First, then he was born. He was 2.5 years, but he couldn't speak. And then the parents were worried about it. Then finally, in some years, he was talking. And he has a school in Munich, was so liberal.
Yes, now look here, how you will answer this. If you see this, that the first statement, Einstein leaving the school, why he left? Because in Munich there was no freedom, right?
Yes.
Why he wanted to study in Switzerland? Because it was more liberal, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what does it sum up? We learn that Einstein loved freedom, right? He was a liberal person. Okay. Then he had seen Mileva as an ally. So what does it tell us? It tells us that he was an intellectual and cultured boy who wanted to be friend with those who were like him. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Okay. Yes. Now let's come to the other one. What did Einstein call his desk drawer at the patent office? We just discussed that. What did he call his table drawer at the patent office?
Because On
No,
a
no,
desk,
what did he call? He would call it with a name.
inventors,
No. He called his desk drawer as the Bureau of, right? You remember?
theoretical science.
Right. Theoretical physics. Right? Theoretical physics.
Physics.
Okay. Now, why did he call it a Bureau of Theoretical Physics?
Because there was so documents which gives the rights information and inventions for the inventor.
Okay, that was Anmol, this answer that you have given, it is the answer for patent. What is the meaning of patent? But why did he call his desk drawer as a Bureau of Theoretical Physics? The reason is in that drawer, he had kept all those papers which contained his ideas. Number one. Number two, he also, there were line papers in the drawer where there were ideas on physics, which he gathered from other inventors, right? That was a resource where he was getting, when he was examining the others' inventions, he was getting the idea, right? And this would give him an idea and he would pen it down on a paper and he would put those papers in the drawer. ये बात समझ में आ गई आपको?
Yes, ma'am.
और clearly समझाओ?
No, ma'am, I understand that.
Okay, wonderful. Now let's come to the next. Why did Einstein write a letter to Franklin Roosevelt?
Ma'am, because Americans dropped a bomb on a Japanese city of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
No. Why did he write a letter to the president, American president? Yes. You see that what it is? Einstein had learned about the process of nuclear fission, right? Discovered in Germany under the rule of Nazis. He was afraid that Nazis can misuse the nuclear bombs or the atomic bombs. So he wrote a letter to Franklin Roosevelt to warn him of this kind of development or this kind of result. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. How did Einstein react to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Ma'am, he was deeply shaken by
Right.
the destruction that had in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Very good.
Because before the bomb, before the nuclear, Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a beautiful cities
Very
in
good.
Japan. But after the nuclear, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki was like a dust.
They turned to dust.
They turned to dust.
Right. Then what did he do?
Then Einstein
Yes.
write a letter.
Good.
Write a letter and says to make a world government.
Very good. Right. So the last part I will just add. The first part you gave a very good answer. Right. Einstein, when he learned about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he was deeply shaken by this destruction. Right. Because Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were two beautiful cities of Japan, they had turned to dust. He wrote a letter to the United Nations requesting them to form a world government and to stop to stop making nuclear weapons. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Why does the world remember Einstein as a world citizen?
Because he has a very he has humanity, and
Okay.
and he has a popularity to campaign the peace and democracy.
Okay. You see that why he has been called world citizen? Because he made efforts for world peace and democracy. Is that clear? He had
Yes,
not
ma'am.
only talked about peace and democracy in America. He had talked about peace and democracy to be established all over the world. So that's how he came to be a world citizen. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, these very questions you will revisit, and if any problem anywhere, you can ask me, right? Now, eighth question is that all the events of the story, they have been given in, they are not in arranged order, right? But you have to arrange them. And it would be great help to you if you are arranging them in a chronological order, right? That you will do yourself. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? That's all. And in the next class, we will take up what next? The snake and the mirror is not in the syllabus. The Lake Isle of Innisfree is also not there in the syllabus. So we will.
Ma'am, I think the Lake of Mystery is, I think no. Legend of Northland.
Legend of the Northland we will take up.
Okay.
Right? Our Legend of the Northland is a very good poem. All the poems are good. Fine? All right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then goodbye.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Take care.
You too.
Yes.